Marcus Steele had seen a lot in his 10 years as CEO of Steele Enterprises, but he'd never seen a woman in heels and a sundress shut down two screaming executives in the middle of his lobby like it was her job. "Are you seriously yelling over a tablecloth color?" the woman snapped, stepping between the two men who were red-faced and waving their arms at each other. Marcus paused in front of the elevator, curious now. "Do either of you even realize you're making a scene in the middle of a corporate building? Because everyone is staring, including me. And I don't care how important your client is, there is no excuse for acting like toddlers in public." The taller man opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "Nope. You're both done. Go take a walk. Separately. Cool off, then figure out if it's worth losing a multi-million-dollar contract over freaking linen." The lobby went quiet. The men stared at her. And then, with mumbled curses, they walked off in opposite directions. Marcus blinked. The woman turned to the concierge desk, apparently unfazed, and smiled. "Sorry about the noise. Some people thrive on chaos." Marcus stepped forward before he even realized he was moving. "That was impressive." She turned, her eyes locking with his. They were sharp, brown, and full of fire. "Thanks. I work with wedding vendors. Drama is basically my morning coffee." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not with either of them?" "Nope. Just hate watching grown men embarrass themselves in public." He laughed despite himself. "I'm Marcus." "Raya," she replied, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. "Raya Lennox." Her name rolled around in his head longer than it should have. She offered a polite nod and turned to leave. "Wait," he said before thinking. "You work with vendors?" She looked back, skeptical. "Yeah, I'm a freelance event coordinator. Mostly weddings." He hadn't planned on needing one, but the upcoming charity gala still didn't have a final plan. His assistant had been dragging her feet, and his mother had been pushing for something less sterile than the usual hotel ballroom. "You ever done corporate events?" She shrugged. "Once or twice, but weddings are more my thing. I've got a gala in 3 weeks. Big one. You free?" She tilted her head. "You don't even know if I'm any good. I saw you shut down 2 grown men who run Fortune 500 companies like they were bickering kids. That's good enough for me." Her brow lifted. "You have a budget?" He laughed again. "Trust me, budget won't be the issue." She studied him for a second, then nodded. "All right, I'll bite. Give me the details." He walked her up to his office, something he never did. His assistant, Julie, blinked in confusion when she saw Raya, but Marcus waved her off. For the next hour, they sat across from each other at his glass conference table while Raya scribbled ideas in her notebook like she'd already built the whole thing in her head. "I hate boring," she said as she flipped a page. "You want this gala to actually raise money? Then stop hosting it like a tax write-off. Make it feel like something people want to throw money at." He leaned back, oddly fascinated. "You always this honest?" "Only when I care," she said, then paused. "And apparently with strangers who could fire me before hiring me. I don't fire people who know what they're doing." She looked up from her notes. "Then I guess we're good." They were more than good. Over the next few days, she took over the planning with a kind of organized chaos Marcus had never seen before. Vendors started calling his office asking for Raya's approval, and deliveries were showing up with her sticky notes attached. She didn't ask permission. She just did what needed to be done, and he liked it way more than he should. "You know," Marcus said one afternoon as they stood in the ballroom she'd somehow transformed with just lighting tests and swatches, "I don't usually let people take over like this." She didn't look at him. "You shouldn't hire people you don't trust to do their jobs." He stared at her. "You think I trust you?" She finally turned. "You're still letting me run your $1 million event, aren't you?" He chuckled. "Fair." Something about her made everything feel different. She wasn't impressed by his office, didn't flinch at his title, and hadn't once asked him for anything. Not even a coffee. That night, he watched her from his office window as she directed a lighting team like she was leading a Broadway production. She was in jeans and a loose t-shirt, hair tied up, shouting instructions with one hand and holding a tablet in the other. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus didn't care about the bottom line. He just wanted to know who she was when she wasn't solving everyone's problems. The next morning, he brought her coffee. "I don't drink caffeine," she said, taking it anyway. "But thanks." "You don't drink coffee?" "I like the smell, not the addiction." He smiled. "You always this complicated? I like to keep things interesting." "Oh, you do?" She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks flushed just a little. "You're flirting with your coordinator. That's a risky move. You're not my employee." "Still risky." He shrugged. "I'm a risk taker." She held his gaze. "Then you should know I don't do flings. Or casual. Or whatever rich CEOs are used to." Something about the way she said it made him freeze. "What do you think I'm used to?" "Women who want the perks. Not the man." He didn't answer. Because it was true. But for once, he wanted to prove her wrong. "You just ordered a 6-tier cake without asking me?" Raya said, standing in the middle of Marcus's office with her arms crossed, the skyline behind her casting shadows across the polished floor. He didn't look up from his tablet. "It's a gala, not a bake sale. It should make an impression." She stepped closer. "You hired me to make it memorable, not to have you override my decisions." "I didn't override anything," he replied, finally glancing up. "I added one thing. A cake." Her lips parted in disbelief. "A cake that costs more than the entire lighting installation. And yet, it'll be photographed more than anything else in the room. Trust me, I've hosted enough of these to know what ends up in the press." She leaned on the edge of his desk, narrowing her eyes. "You're starting to sound like every other executive who thinks aesthetics equal impact." He set the tablet down. "And you're starting to sound like someone who doesn't listen before judging." Her jaw tightened, but then she straightened. "Fine. You want a cake? We'll make the cake work. But don't get in my way again unless you plan on running the entire show yourself." "Is that a threat?" he asked, his tone more curious than offended. "No," she said, turning toward the door. "It's a boundary." When she left, he stood in silence for a moment, staring at the closed door. She challenged him in ways no one else dared to. And somehow he couldn't stop thinking about the way her voice had dipped when she said the word boundary. Later that evening, he stepped into the ballroom again. The transformation was nearly complete. Chandeliers hung from custom rigging, casting golden light across deep navy linens and sharp silver accents. The space had become something cinematic, almost dreamlike. Raya was crouched near the stage, adjusting the placement of a floral arrangement with a stubborn intensity. "You missed dinner," he said from behind her. Without looking up, she replied, "I had a sandwich at my desk." "That's not dinner." "I wasn't aware you were monitoring my meals now." He walked closer. "I wasn't. I just thought you might want real food." She stood, wiping her hands on her skirt. "Why?" "Because I'm working past 7. "No," he said simply. "Because I know what it's like to forget yourself in the middle of a deadline." That made her pause. She looked at him differently now, like she was seeing past the crisp suit and expensive watch. "You forget yourself?" "More often than I'd admit." He pulled something from behind his back, a small white box tied with a black ribbon. "I didn't know what you liked, so I guessed," he said. She took it slowly, opening it to reveal a delicate fruit tart from one of the city's most exclusive patisseries. "I didn't peg you as the dessert type," she said, quieter now. "I'm not," he admitted. "But I wanted to bring you something that wasn't about the event." "That's thoughtful." She hesitated. "Why?" He met her eyes. "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you stopped a fight in my lobby." She exhaled, all the fight leaving her shoulders. "I don't do well with blurred lines, Marcus." "I'm not asking you to blur anything," he said. "I'm asking you to have dessert with me." "Just dessert." She stared at the box for a long moment, then finally said, "All right. But only because I skipped lunch too." They sat on the edge of the empty stage, passing the tart back and forth with 2 forks Raya pulled from her oversized tote. "You always carry silverware?" he asked, amused. "Single woman in a city full of overpriced salad bars?" "I come prepared." He laughed. It was a full, unguarded sound that surprised them both. "You're not what I expected," she said after a quiet beat. "What did you expect?" "Someone colder." "Less." Human. And yet I'm feeding you berries and cream on a stage I didn't design. She tilted her head. So what's the real Marcus Steele like? He paused. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. They should. He looked at her and something shifted in the air between them. A kind of electricity, quiet but undeniable. The next afternoon, she arrived earlier than usual wearing a navy jumpsuit that made her look like she belonged in a fashion editorial. He didn't comment on it, he couldn't afford to. Not with the way his chest tightened when she walked into the room. I need your signature, she said, dropping a contract on his desk. Catering wants final approval on the revised menu. He pulled a pen from his drawer. You changed it. I added a vegetarian option. Not everyone wants steak. You're full of surprises. She looked directly at him. You haven't seen half of them. He signed the paper, handed it back. I'm starting to think I want to. She hesitated, then said, tonight. After the walkthrough. There's a jazz set in the lounge across the street. They serve real food. No tarts. He blinked. You're asking me out? I'm inviting you to something away from chandeliers and cake. It's not a date. It's a conversation. He nodded. I'll take it. When they met that night, the air was different. Warmer. The lounge was dim, the music low and smooth. Raya ordered red wine. Marcus took a whiskey neat. They didn't talk about the gala. Or vendors. Or floral budgets. Instead, she told him about growing up in Philly with two younger brothers and a mother who ran a salon out of their kitchen. He told her about Sunday mornings at his grandfather's diner in Boston, the only place he'd ever felt invisible in a good way. By the time they left, it was late. The city had quieted. They stood near the curb, steps apart. I should get a cab, she said, glancing around. I'll have my car take you. That's not necessary. I wasn't offering for convenience, he said. I just want you to get home safe. She didn't argue. As the sleek black car pulled up, she turned to him. This doesn't change anything, she said. I know. I'm still running this event my way. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. She stepped into the car, but before the door closed, she added, You're easy to talk to. That's dangerous. He smiled just once. Only if you're trying not to like me. The door shut before she could respond. And Marcus stood there, watching the car disappear into the night, already knowing she was going to be the one thing he hadn't planned for. The gala was 48 hours away and the ballroom buzzed with a low hum of last-minute adjustments. Technicians fine-tuned the lighting angles while servers rehearsed synchronized tray passing. Marcus stood near the far wall, arms folded, watching Raya as she moved through the chaos with laser focus. She didn't see him yet. She was reviewing the placement of the donor wall with the venue manager, one hand gesturing in tight, efficient circles while the other held a clipboard covered in handwritten notes. Her brows were drawn in concentration, her lips moving fast as she rattled off adjustments. He'd never seen anyone command a room without raising their voice. A quiet authority. Surgical precision. You're not going to hover all night, are you? Raya's voice cut into his thoughts as she approached, clipboard now tucked under her arm. I like watching you work, he said without hesitation. That sounds like a line. It isn't. She exhaled, not quite a sigh. It's getting there. But the stage floor's half an inch off center. And the violinist wants to swap the cocktail hour song list. Again. You want me to talk to him? No, she said, brushing a curl away from her temple. You'd probably offer him a raise. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He silenced it without looking. Everything all right? She asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Just bored nonsense, he said. They're questioning why I changed venues this year. Her expression shifted. They think this is too risky? They think it's too different. Good, she said, eyes sparking. That means it'll actually be remembered. He studied her for a beat. You ever doubt yourself? Only when people stop questioning me. His lips curved. You're dangerous when you're confident. I'm always confident, she said, then added, but I'm not always dangerous. That part depends on who's watching. Later that evening, Marcus returned to his office to find a sealed envelope waiting on his desk. No name. No return address. Just his initials written in clean, deliberate ink. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Raya, standing beside a man he recognized instantly, Daniel Grayson, the venture capitalist who'd tried to hostilely acquire one of Steele Enterprises' subsidiaries last year. They weren't touching, but they were close. Too close. Marcus read the typed note folded behind the photo. Are you sure she's just your event coordinator? He stared at the words, his jaw tightening. The paper crumpled in his fist. By the time he reached the ballroom again, most of the crew had cleared out. Only Raya remained, rearranging the seating chart board with a tired but determined look. Who's Daniel Grayson to you? Her hand froze mid-placement. She turned slowly. Excuse me, I said. I heard you. Her voice had gone cool. What does he have to do with anything? I got a photo, Marcus said flatly, of the two of you, together. Raya didn't blink. And you believed it. I didn't say that. But you confronted me with it. He stared at her, pulse hammering. Are you working with him? Her laugh was sharp and humorless. Jesus, no. But thanks for the vote of confidence. Then explain. She stepped forward, eyes burning. Daniel Grayson is my ex-fiancé. We broke up 3 years ago when I found out he was funneling money through shell companies connected to illegal real estate deals. I reported him. Marcus's stomach turned. He got investigated. And he got away with it. Because people like him always do. But he lost clients, reputation, and a lot of money. She folded her arms. He's been trying to ruin me ever since. Why didn't you tell me? Because it has nothing to do with this event. Or you. I'm funding this event. My name's all over it. I have a right to know if someone's trying to use it as leverage. Raya's shoulders tensed. So now I'm a liability? I didn't say that. But you thought it. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of her. This isn't just about the gala anymore. No, she said, voice tight. It stopped being just a gala the moment you gave me fruit tart and asked about my past. Neither moved. Finally, Raya turned away. I need to finish this chart. If you want me off the project, say it now. He didn't answer. She didn't wait. The next day, Marcus canceled his meetings and drove to the other side of the city. He found the building Raya had mentioned once in passing, her shared office space in Westwood, tucked between a law firm and a florist. She was inside, seated at a long communal table, surrounded by folders and fabric samples. She didn't look up when he entered. I'm not here to fire you, he said. Good, she replied without shifting. I'm here to apologize. Still nothing. I was wrong. About how I handled it. About you. She finally looked at him, and the hurt in her eyes hit harder than he expected. You think I don't know what it's like to be questioned? She said, voice low. Every vendor who second-guesses me. Every client who assumes I'm too emotional to handle pressure. And then you were supposed to be different. I want to be, he said quietly. Then prove it. He stepped forward, setting a file on the table. This is everything my legal team has on Grayson. I had them run a full background scan. I didn't ask them to dig into you. Just him. She opened the file cautiously. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Why? Because you said he's been trying to ruin you. And I don't like when people threaten the people I care about. She looked up. Care about? I didn't plan on it, he said. But I do. She closed the folder, hands still resting on it. He's going to try something at the gala. I can feel it. Then let him, Marcus said. I'll be ready. Something softened in her then, just slightly. The tension in her shoulders released enough to let her breathe. I'm not used to people standing in front of me, she said. They usually expect me to stand for them. I'm not most people. No, she said, a faint trace of something like hope in her voice. You're not. That night, he sent a message to security doubling the personnel at the gala. He rerouted press credentials and hired a private investigator to monitor Grayson's known associates. He wasn't just protecting an event anymore. He was protecting her. And for the first time, Marcus Steele realized he hadn't fallen into this by accident. He'd walked directly into it with his eyes wide open. The gala sparkled. Raya stood near the grand entrance of the repurposed art museum, her clipboard nowhere in sight for the first time in weeks. She wore a sleek black gown with a structured neckline and a thin silver cuff at her wrist, understated, elegant, and entirely intentional. She hadn't dressed to impress anyone. She dressed like armor. Guests flowed through the glass doors, greeted by the soft echo of live strings from the upper mezzanine. The space had been transformed into something surreal, walls awash in soft light, tall white arrangements rising like sculptures, and a chandelier installation suspended like a galaxy overhead. She spotted Marcus across the room. He was speaking with two donors, his tux crisp, his expression composed. But when his eyes met hers, he paused mid-sentence. And then, without breaking from the conversation, he gestured subtly for her to wait. He found her near the sculpture garden just off the main floor, where the noise of the crowd softened beneath the open-air canopy. "You look like you belong in a Vogue spread," he said. "Don't get used to it," she replied, her tone lighter than she expected. His expression didn't shift, but his eyes were different, more focused, more intent. "You all right?" "I'm fine." "You're not." Raya tilted her head. "You ever consider not being right all the time?" "I've considered it," he said, stepping closer. "Didn't suit me." She exhaled. "They're whispering. The Grayson crowd. A few of them are here under fake foundations. I flagged it with security." "I know," he said. "They've already been marked." "They won't get near the donor files." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She nodded slowly. "It's strange." "What is?" "I've spent years keeping my head down, fixing other people's messes. And now," he waited. "Now someone else is fixing things before I can," she finished. Marcus didn't touch her, but the space between them felt charged. "You don't have to prove anything tonight." "I'm not trying to prove something. You're trying to stay in control." "I get it." She looked up at him. "You really do, don't you?" "I've spent most of my life thinking control was the only way to survive. Truth is, it just keeps people out." A flicker of emotion crossed her face. He leaned in slightly. "Let me in, Raya." Her breath caught, but before she could answer, a staff member approached with a tentative expression. "There's an issue with the auction table," she said. "One of the items went missing." Raya turned instantly. "Which one?" "The Parisian sculpture. The one from Lemaire's estate." She didn't wait for a response. She moved fast, weaving through the crowd, Marcus close behind. When they reached the silent auction display, the pedestal where the sculpture had been now stood empty. "Check the security feeds," Marcus said to his head of security, who was already on a discreet call. "No one would have gotten it past the entrance without triggering the sensors," Raya said, scanning the floor. "We had a few guests step out to smoke in the rear courtyard," the staffer offered. "Get someone to double-check the perimeter," Marcus said. He turned to Raya. "This is Grayson." "Of course it's him," she muttered. "He wants to derail the night. Humiliate us." "He's not going to." Minutes later, security returned with footage. A man in a dark tailored suit had slipped the sculpture into a bag during a staged distraction. It wasn't Grayson himself, but it was one of his Shell Foundation reps, a name Raya recognized from court documents. Marcus handed the footage off to the authorities, who were already on site for the event's high-profile nature. The man was intercepted before reaching his car. The sculpture was recovered. The crowd never noticed a thing. Back inside, the string quartet shifted to a warm, cinematic score. Servers passed flutes of sparkling wine. The evening resumed untouched. Raya stood beneath the central chandelier, her shoulders tense. Marcus appeared beside her. "It's over. For now." "No," he said softly. "It's over. He won't come near you again." She turned. "How do you know?" "Because I already filed a restraining order. And his board was notified of tonight's stunt. He's being investigated again. This time with evidence he won't bury." She stared at him. "I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't need you to." Raya looked away for a moment, then back. "You scare me," she said quietly. Marcus blinked. "That's not the reaction I was going for. You don't push. You don't demand. You just show up. And you keep showing up. That's new for me." He stepped closer. "I'm not going anywhere." The music shifted. A slow, rich melody filled the space. Couples were already drifting toward the center. Marcus held out a hand. Dance with me. Raya hesitated. He didn't move. Finally, she placed her hand in his. They moved to the floor, surrounded by shimmering light and elegant gowns. He held her carefully like she was something worth protecting, but not something fragile. I almost didn't take the job, she said, voice low. I almost didn't stop in the lobby. She smiled, but it flickered. You know this changes everything. I'm counting on it. They danced in silence for a few beats. Then she asked, what happens after tonight? I offer you a permanent position. She blinked. As what? He met her eyes. My partner. In business. And in life. Raya froze mid-step. I'm not asking you to say yes tonight, he added quickly. But I am asking you to think about what we could build. Together. No titles. No secrets. Just us. She stared at him for a long moment. I never thought I'd find someone in a place like this, she whispered. Neither did I. The music swelled. When the gala ended, the guests gone and the lights dimmed, they stood alone in the center of the empty hall. Raya leaned against his chest, her heels discarded somewhere behind them. I think, she said, you might have actually won my heart. He kissed the top of her head. I think you won mine the moment you tore into two executives without blinking. She laughed softly, the sound echoing in the hall. Outside, the city glowed. And inside, in the place where it all began, two people finally stood still. No walls, no games, no barriers. Just love. Earned. And finally fully theirs. The morning after the gala arrived with a brightness that crept through the penthouse windows and slipped across the marble floors like a secret. Raya stirred in the oversized bed, her body tangled in the sheets, the scent of lavender and clean cologne clinging to the air like memory. Marcus sat in the adjacent room, barefoot, suit jacket draped over the back of a velvet chair, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was steady but softer than usual. No, the sculpture's secure. Press knows it was a short-lived misunderstanding. Donors are thrilled. The night raised over $3 million. He paused. Yes. I'll handle the foundation's next steps personally. When he ended the call, he stood in the doorway watching her stretch and push the hair from her eyes. You're up early, she murmured. I had to make a few things disappear. She sat up slowly. You mean the fallout? I mean the man who tried to sabotage you. Her expression sobered. They're not going to let it go, are they? People like Grayson, they don't vanish just because you threaten them. No, Marcus said, crossing the room, but they lose power when the people they're trying to ruin stop hiding. She looked at him, really looked. You think I've been hiding? I think you've been surviving. There's a difference. Raya tucked her knees under the sheet. So what now? Do I go back to coordinating weddings while you return to boardrooms and shareholders? He crouched beside the bed. That depends. Did you mean it when you said you were tired of standing alone? She didn't answer right away. Then, I don't want to be someone you save, Marcus. I want to be someone you build with. Then let's build. He reached for something on the nightstand, a sleek black folder with her name engraved in silver across the front. She opened it slowly, her brows drawing together. What is this? A joint venture, he said. The venue we used for the gala? I bought it. Quietly. And I want to turn it into something permanent. A space for events, art, music, whatever you want to make it. She stared at the papers, stunned. You want me to run it? I want you to own half of it. I'll fund the development. You design the vision. Her voice was barely audible. Why me? Because you're the only person I've ever met who can turn chaos into beauty and still make it look effortless. Her eyes welled. She blinked fast, looking down. I don't cry. Good, he said, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. Because I'm not done. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. She froze. I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not tonight. Not yet. But I bought this because I wanted you to know that for the first time in my life, I'm thinking about forever. With you. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not a diamond, but a single sapphire, deep blue, set in platinum. Elegant. Unconventional. Like her. Raya touched it but didn't lift it. You really don't play by the rules, do you? I hate rules. She looked up, eyes fierce through the emotion. Then here's mine. If we do this, if we build this life, it has to be on equal ground. No secrets. No power games. Done. No skipping hard conversations. I'll keep the wine stocked. No calling in favors without telling me. He nodded. And no pretending I don't need you just because I'm used to doing everything alone. Her lips parted, surprised. I've never needed anyone, he added. Until you. She leaned in and kissed him, not with urgency, but with certainty. Later that week, they returned to the repurposed museum together. The gala banners had come down, but the soul of the place remained. High ceilings, exposed beams, the scent of old wood and possibility. Raya walked through the still space, her heels echoing across the floor. I want to keep the open gallery concept, she said, already imagining. Add a rooftop garden. Maybe even a culinary wing for high-end tastings. Marcus followed her, hands in his pockets. You think like an architect. No, she said, glancing back. I think like a woman who finally gets to shape something without asking permission. He caught up to her, took her hand. Then let's start building. They signed the paperwork that afternoon. The space would be known as Lennox and Steele, a name that had already begun to circulate in the city's design circles like wildfire. Within months, the venue was booked out a year in advance. Not just for weddings, but for installations, fundraising dinners, and even fashion shows. Raya curated events with a signature blend of grit and elegance. Marcus handled logistics, negotiations, and the occasional branding strategy that required him to flash a tailored suit and a devastating smile. They worked in sync like they'd been doing it for years. One rainy evening, as the final guests of a literary benefit trickled into town cars, Marcus pulled Raya into the covered alcove outside the entrance. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't yelled at those two execs in my lobby? She smiled. I think they'd still be screaming about tablecloths. He lifted her hand to his lips. And I'd still be thinking I had everything I wanted, not realizing I was wrong. She leaned into him. And I'd still be surviving instead of living. They didn't speak for a moment, just listened to the rain hit the pavement, steady and sure. Then she said, Ask me. He looked at her, confused. What? You've been carrying that ring in your pocket for weeks, she said. Ask me. He reached for it slowly, like it was the first time. Dropped to one knee beneath soft gold light. Raya Lennox, he said, voice low but unshaking. Will you marry me and keep proving to me, every single day, that life only starts when you let someone in? She didn't hesitate. Yes. The applause from the nearby valet station made them laugh, but neither turned. They were too busy holding each other, standing in the middle of the rain, in the middle of the city, in the middle of a life they'd built together from the ashes of everything they thought they'd wanted. 1 year later, they married in the rooftop garden she designed herself. No press, no sponsors, just 80 people they loved, soft music, and a sky full of stars. Marcus wore a gray suit instead of black. Raya wore a dress with pockets. There were no gold-plated name cards, but there was laughter, and dancing, and a kiss that didn't end when the music did. And when their guests left and the city quieted, Marcus carried her across the threshold of their new home, a townhouse tucked on a quiet street, with creaky floors and a fireplace she insisted on keeping even in the summer. Inside, beside a photo of them in front of the gala venue's entrance, sat the velvet box with the ring she still wore every day. Not because it was worth a fortune, but because it had been the first promise he ever made her. And the only one he would never break.